Hello and welcome to Collectors Corner Sydney, and today I'm going to be taking you through two wines that I've recently picked up at auction. Enjoy. So the first wine I picked up was this, the 2006 Domaine Auguste Clap from Cornat. And then the second was the 2018 Flaccinello Fontodi della Pieve. Two very different wines from very different regions, but both come from producers that really matter. And for me, that's key with buying these in auction. It's that you have to have the producer, the history, the reputation, the aging potential as well, and then obviously the price then needs to make sense after that. So let's get into a bit of history between these producers.
And wine number one, let's talk about the Clap Cornat 2006. So if you know Northern Rhone, Clap is one of those names that will immediately come to mind. It's not a polished commercial modern style of estate, it's more of a benchmark traditional producer, and really one that sort of helped put Cornat on the map. The appellation itself is historically slightly more rugged, a little bit more serious than its neighbours. It's 100% Syrah and grown on steep granite slopes, and the wines at their best are dark, savoury, incredibly well structured and very long lived, and that's why Clap has the reputation it does really. The estate is then famous for making those wines in the traditional way, not chasing fashion, not trying to soften the edges too much, and not trying to make Cornat into something that it isn't. And that's a big part of the appeal as why people buy Clap. And that's what I like about this bottle. It isn't interesting because it's trendy. It's because of the credibility. The vintage is also quite interesting. So 2006, as you can see there. It's not the first year people shout about when it comes to Northern Rhone. Doesn't necessarily have the same headline profile as 2005 or 2010, but I quite like that because once you get into a producer of this sort of quality, you don't always need the loudest vintage. Sometimes something less hyped years ago gives you better entry point and a wine that still ends up being absolutely superb with age. So that's wine number one. Moving on to wine number two. So the second wine is 2018 Flaccinello della Pieve from Fontodi. This is a completely different sort of type of wine, but it matters in a very similar way, funnily enough, I think, to Clap. Fontodi, one of the great producers of Chianti Classico based in Panzano, and over time it has become one of the real benchmarks in Tuscany as well. What makes Flaccinello slightly different though to a little of the more other super Tuscan wines that sort of have a little bit more international recognition, the Sassicaias, the Ornelias, and the Bordeaux sort of blends. Flaccinello is 100% Sangiovese, and it sits in that prestige conversation of the previous producers, but it does it purely through Sangiovese, and that kind of gives this wine that's what gave this wine a bit of appeal to me. It's not just a famous Tuscan wine, it's one of those wines which help build the case for Sangiovese really as a world-class grape when handled by such a top producer as this. That's one of the big reasons why I wanted this bottle, and there's the 2018 vintage is also what made it again quite interesting, similar to the Clap. It's not one of those huge blockbuster Tuscan vintages that everybody sort of piled into immediately. It's generally seen as a bit more measured, a little bit more balanced, and a little less obvious. And again, I quite like that because when you're buying from producers this strong, you don't necessarily need that noisy vintage again. And that's what Flaccinello tends to offer anyway. It's prestige, but a proper sense of identity, and it sits in that really attractive space between tradition and collectability and real drinkability as well.
So yeah, that was the history on the producers, and I think the point I'm trying to make is what I'm really looking to buy is looking for a strong producer that actually matters in the region, something with aging potential as well, and ideally that's something that has enough demand over time to stay relevant. And yeah, that I'm also going to enjoy it when drinking. That's why I tend to try them. As you saw, I bought 2 bottles of each. I try to buy 3, and what I tend to do is open 1 and drink it, and then put 2 away for storage, or 1 away from storage where I can either resell or potentially open at a later date. And that then leads on to the sort of investment lens. I'll get into sort of what I paid and whether that sort of investment point of view that I ended up taking on these. So for the Corner, I ended up paying $216 for each bottle all in, and then for the Flaccinello, I paid $194 all in. And honestly, I think both were pretty good buys, just slightly different reasons though. So the Clap for me is probably a more classic auction buy. It's a mature bottle from a benchmark producer, and wines like that don't really appear too often at sensible prices. When you look at the market as well, I think I found one for 150 euros within Europe, couldn't find any within Australia, and older vintages like 2003 I saw recently sold for $250 USD a bottle. So yeah, 216 all in. I think I bought well. It's not in ridiculous once in a lifetime way, but the sort of where the producer, the age and the scarcity make the price make sense as a sensible auction buy. And then the Flaccinello, bit different. This one feels like a bit more obvious value buy on paper. I paid, like I said, $194 all in, and then I saw a current retail listing for it for about $310 for the 2018. So I'm just looking at where the market is today. I think I'm comfortably below where it is, and that doesn't make it like a good long-term investment, but it makes it a good buy. So yeah, if I had to split them out, I'd probably say the Flaccinello is a cleaner value buy, but the Clap is probably the better investment buy overall, and that's because it is such a benchmark producer, a mature bottle, and a tighter supply. So yeah, for me, best pure value play Flaccinello, and the more long term would be the Clap. So yeah, given that, I think that's what I'm looking for with auction wines, not just good bottles, not just famous labels, but something with real credibility, real demand and prices that actually give you a chance of sort of being right in the long term. And if I can find either of them again at the right price, I'd definitely be picking up more. If you like this kind of content, then let me know, and I'll keep doing more of these wines as I buy more at auction. Hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers.